Today, I'm going to tell you how you can beat procrastination learning a language forever. So if you don't know who I am Viral, and I've currently learned Mandarin for around 2 years using immersion. And I can understand you probably might be struggling with something like this as well, where you want to learn Chinese. You really do want to. And then the problem is that when you do want to learn Chinese, instead of actually trying to go in and learn Chinese, you sort of feel like some sort of fear, I guess, to learn Chinese, or you just want to put it off later. Or maybe it's just like me, where one of my favorite video games was Tower Defense X, and it was very, very stimulating. It's a game on Roblox, and you pretty much place these towers, and the unique part was that, enemies could actually kill your towers, and just, very, very was engaging and fun. However, this also did come with a problem, which was I started playing this more, and I started to procrastinate a lot more on my Chinese. I just was at every around 9 p.m. at night, what I would do is that I would pretty much, be in my was that, I'd pretty much, take a shower after that. And then I would usually be given two options, which was I could either go and study Chinese, or I could just go downstairs and, go play the video game on the big family computer. And many times, nine times out of 10, I would go and, play the video game, trying to be, expert mode for the 600th time. And then every time after that, I would then feel like, oh, dang it. It's like, I could have just studied Chinese during that time, but instead I just made a choice in order to then be able to go play Tower Defense X instead. If you want to learn Chinese, you just really couldn't, because it's like you would just procrastinate and then you just put it off later and later. Because one or two times where you just don't learn Chinese, it isn't going to be a big detriment to you. But if we were to put it off for more days, where we don't study Chinese for a week, then a month, then it's really going to show some big detriments, because we haven't been making any good progress. So we really need to get rid of this as fast as possible. The conventional advice given, where it's like, oh, you gotta be more disciplined. Oh, you should have a time tracker and all this stuff. Don't get me wrong, these two things are very important, and you should absolutely have the goal in order to cultivate these two things. But I'd say there's actually a lot more of a deeper root where we could actually beat procrastination in Chinese. And I will also address some of the other things where you're probably more anxious, or you're probably scared of learning Chinese itself. It sounds a bit strange, but in a way you are actually scared of learning Chinese when you want to procrastinate it, because you're just slowly avoiding it. But let's get to the first point, which is the reason why you procrastinate in a way, is because you actually don't think learning Chinese is actually worth it. Definitely, it's not because it's you don't want to learn Chinese, because you do want to learn Chinese, and you want to learn Chinese because you just want to do it, and there's probably going to be some underlying reason behind it. However, that's not going to be the same for your lizard brain, because it thinks that, learning Chinese is a dangerous thing and doesn't want to do it because, it's scary, or it takes too much energy. It's just not worth learning it. Although your conscious mind might say that, there's going to be another part of your brain just telling you that, just oh, we shouldn't learn Chinese and that. So how do we exactly fix this in order to beat procrastination and make learning Chinese as fun as, let's say, playing your favorite video game, or scrolling and all these other things, where you're going to find the fact that you're not really going to procrastinate Chinese anymore? Because think about it. Have you ever started and just thought about procrastinating scrolling, or procrastinating, I don't know, video games, or procrastinating, at least, I don't know, eating, just a simple human act? No, you probably haven't really thought about procrastinating on those, because, it's actually, worth it to, do these things, because playing a video game helps me relax. It gives me the stimulation. Scrolling gives me all this stuff. Eating keeps me alive. And that's exactly what we kind of want to do with learning Chinese, where we want to make learning Chinese worth it. But simply just trying to convince yourself that Chinese is worth it, things like, oh, I'm going to be able to speak with more Chinese people later. Yeah, your conscious mind is going to be able to listen to that. But if you just try that to yourself, and you've already probably tried that, where it's oh, I really need to learn Chinese because of this. Yeah, your brain isn't going to be exactly convinced by that, because we've already tried that many times before. And I found the best way in order to actually make Chinese a lot more stimulating and fun is simply just using a way to track the progress, just like a video game, and doing that through, counting hours. And don't click off this video right now, because you've already heard this advice many times before, because yeah, counting hours in Chinese actually not only just helps you keep track of your progress and just makes you a little bit less anxious that you're making or not making any progress, and helps you with knowing what activities you're supposed to do, but it actually sort of gamifies the process in a way where if you actually consistently track your language, you actually get to see a number going up. And every single time you're going to be able to every time you study Chinese, you're going to finally be able to see some sort of like get that dopamine hit. So yeah, I'm able to be able to do Chinese again. And then because of that, you're now going to be able to have some sort of positive feedback loop of learning Chinese, where at first it's like, okay, learning Chinese, it's like, it just feels a bit too hard. But then you're then going to be able to push through the pain, because you know there's going to be some sort of like little reward behind it. Because if you kind of think about it, because we actually do many things that are initially painful, but then give us more reward later. It's not completely impossible. For example, let's say you're going to exercise. Many people do not like to exercise because they think it's painful, but there are also a very large minority of people who really love to exercise because they know they're going to get some sort of benefit. They just need to push through the pain. The same thing has to go with Chinese. But the only problem I can tell you is that other than just tracking your progress with learning Chinese, it's just going to be the hardest part is that actually starting. Because if you're not going to start learning Chinese and actually make the big breakthrough to learn Chinese and then finally start this positive feedback loop, then you're going to be able to get some sort of loop of like, okay, I'm learning Chinese, I'm starting to make progress, and then pretty much I'm making more progress, I'm able to understand Chinese better, then I'm going to learn more, and then it's soon going to be hard to actually quit this habit of learning Chinese after a while. But starting is the hardest part, because even though it may seem easy, it's actually very hard, because it just feels like you're going to have to get through so much of this mental barrier of just, you really have to just look at this oh my goodness, I have to study Chinese. And the best advice I can give for that is that you simply have to you have to actually lower the bar of success. Because one thing I can tell you right now is that one thing I have actually been procrastinating recently on is actually reading, where usually I would have some sort of habit of reading at night, but recently I actually felt that just reading at night wasn't really worth it anymore. I'd start procrastinating it, where I just rather go either right to sleep or do something else. Let's say, for example, watching a YouTube video instead of actually going on my, ebook reader and reading the book I want to read. So what I tried to do instead was actually just simply take it a very small step, where I literally just told myself last night, you know what, I'm just going to go read one page tonight and I'll just count that as a win. I tried that and I did it. I actually read one page. And the strange thing about that was that I actually, after that, it was just I actually kind of do want to try reading a little bit more. Of course, I didn't read more that night. I just wanted to go to sleep. But now today, I'm a lot more motivated towards go read at night, even though I might be more tired later on. And because there's just that small momentum, you really have to get the ball rolling. Because have an hour speaking session with a Chinese friend, and you're gonna be like, wait, what? I can't do that. Instead, you're gonna have to literally do it slowly, where eventually you're gonna get into the flow of doing things, and you're gonna have this positive feedback loop coming with you, where eventually then you're gonna be able to do the thing that you really want to do, which was an hour speaking session with your friend. Now, this is pretty much the core of just beating procrastination, which is just, you have to make the thing worth it to do. And it's not only just worth it where you just have this underlying reason of why you want to do it, but it's also just because you also know that at the end of a session, you're going to get something. Because in many ways, procrastination actually can be it's actually a normal and natural thing. Because imagine if I were to again tell you, okay, go climb this mountain. You're probably going to put it off because you're not ready for it yet. You don't want to climb the entire mountain. But instead, if we tell you, okay, just get to that checkpoint 1, then it's going to be a lot easier, where we're going to tell you, okay, get to checkpoint 1. Okay, that's great. But also because it's we also need some sort of loop where it's okay, we were able to learn, and then okay, it was a great study session. Let's do it again. And then soon you're going to be able to build this habit. This is the exact core in order to beat procrastination. And the hardest part is at the beginning. But there's also some other tips I want to give with beating procrastination as well. And the next thing, other than just pretty much making the act worth it, is you also have to be certain on what you want to do. You have to be very specific on what you want to do, because you could definitely give yourself a very small task to do, but you also have to be very clear what it is. Because I find many times if I do not try to specify what I want to do for, let's say, a language learning routine, I'm actually going to find myself procrastinating, where it's like, I don't know what to do, and because I don't know what to do, I'm just going to go put it off later. Instead, if I literally specifically tell myself, okay, I'm going to do interactive immersion, watching watching some Deltarune gameplay, and just mining and putting in Anki that way, I pretty much know very well what I am going to do. And let's just also add, I'm going to do it at around 7 p.m. And if I have pretty much a very specific thing I'm going to do, it's going to be a lot easier for me to again do the task, and a lot harder for me to back out of it, because I know exactly what to do. Because you could definitely end up accidentally procrastinating even though you want to do a task. Because let's say, for example, I wanted to do interactive immersion, but I didn't know what content I wanted to do. Then you're going to be like, oh damn, should I go use this piece of content, that piece of content, that piece of content? And then you watch one piece of Chinese content, accidentally do too much free flow, and then after that you're going, oh damn, I was procrastinating that thing. Okay, yeah, it's not worth it later. Let's just do it later. So you'll have to be very certain on that. And of course, I can give you a template, which is like, you have to state which activity you want to do. Interactive immersion is just another way of just saying, okay, I'm just going to go look up some words here and there, but I'm not going to overdo it. And then you're going to be like, okay, how much time I want to do it? Let's just say 30 minutes. And then what piece of content you're going to use? Okay, I'm going to go, watch someone playing Deltarune in, the Chinese version. Okay, another tip aside from searching I can give is you also have to make the other things that you want to do, just like how we want to make Chinese word learning, we also have to make the other thing we want to do less worded. And there are two ways I can tell you to do it, which is you also have to find a way in order to address these needs later. Let's say, for example, you need to text your mom, or you're going to need to go play that video game sometime else. Assuming you don't want to completely get rid of it and quit that bad habit, then you're going to have to find a way in order to address that need later on. And the best way I can tell you to do that is, well, you can pretty much just tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to do it later. Because are you actually going to die if you don't text someone right now? Well, of course, if it's an absolute emergency, then yeah, of course, don't study Chinese right now. But 90% of the time, it's going to be like, yeah, are you actually just going to die if you don't reply to the text right now? You could probably just wait 30 minutes later. Yeah, it's not going to be that bad. It's just going to be like that. And also, you could also do it later. You could do it later. And another thing I could tell you is that another good way in order to just find yourself before you procrastinate is you could actually try to pretend to start the task. And then you could actually find and realize your brain will come up with all these excuses, being like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. And then you could be like, oh, that's actually a really good thing. So you can leverage that. And what you can do is you can literally get a paper out and literally just or some sort of Google Doc and literally write down what you want to do later on after you're done with the study session. And then after that, okay, you could just pretty much set that aside, and your brain will literally shut up about it, because now you've literally written it down and you've addressed those needs, and then you're going to do them later. So then you've set those aside, and then now you can be just completely focused, and you won't literally have say these or the other things bothering you. The last point now I want to make is what happens when you inevitably do procrastinate again. Because even though we can give you all these cool tricks to help you not procrastinate, it's going to be eventually where there will be a time where you will procrastinate. Now, it's actually a very simple way in order to deal with this as well, which is the first thing you need to do as well is you have to forgive yourself. Do not beat yourself up over it, because if you try to beat yourself up over it, it's oh, I'm not disciplined enough. Oh, I was like this. Why didn't I learn Chinese how I used to do? Then what's going to happen is that you're actually going to feel worse, and you're going to feel more anxious, and you're just going to feeling like learning Chinese actually isn't worth it, because now it feels like you've put this bigger barrier to learning Chinese, because now it's you now have to it feels like now you kind of need to now catch up with learning Chinese. And because of that, it's now it's going to just make learning Chinese harder, and just going to make doing the bad habit easier, because you're not going to feel worse, and you're now going to want to just have some more comfort with doing it. So the first thing you want to do is forgive yourself, and honestly just forget that you actually procrastinate at all, and just move on the next day. Just move on. Of course, the second thing that you want to do as well is also journal kind of like what happened during that day. So what I would do usually every time at night is like, in case like I just missed a day learning Chinese or I procrastinated, I usually would write down something like, okay, tonight I didn't learn Chinese because let's say for example I played this video game too much. It's like, okay, maybe I was scheduled to play the video game later, or I'll try to quit the video game slowly. But again, like I said, you should be critical of what you did. Like, of course, procrastination isn't a good thing, but at the same time, you also shouldn't obsessively beat yourself up over it, because it's just going to make the situation worse. And finally, as well, this is the last thing you need to do is just do the task anyways that you're going to do. Yes, you just do the task anyways, because after you've done the forgiveness, after you've done the journaling, it could be either at night or literally right after you've just procrastinated on something or did a bad habit, then the thing you need to do regardless, unless it's an emergency, then that's different. Then the thing you need to do is get to the task. Like, instead of just doing like the 30 minutes of, let's say, interactive immersion, just literally just do 5 seconds of interactive immersion. Like, literally go through the motion of like opening YouTube and literally like putting in ASB player, and then after that you would just do the task for just a little bit, close the computer, and just pretend that was your work. So you can at least end off your day at a high note, where at least you poked at it, at least you did the thing, instead of just be like, oh, I actually have to do it tomorrow, and then I have so much work to do. But at least instead you at least did it. You at least kept the habit of doing it, and at least even after you procrastinate, you still did it. So that's pretty much the ways I have found in order to beat procrastination. Now, if you're also struggling like this and you really aren't really sure of a tactical way in order to learn Chinese, using the right methods, then I can highly recommend you, first thing in the description, it's my Mandarin communication course or Chinese communication course, where I'll go over with you on how to speak Chinese, but not only just just basic phrases, but I'll also tell you how to actually learn it through input, and I'm gonna be pretty much showing you all the resources that I know. If you also have any more questions, make sure to also DM me on Instagram. I'll answer them. And yes, we have a world to explore. 我们的旅程刚刚开始. And good luck on your Mandarin immersion journey.